Hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to some more Next Fest. We're going to cover a couple more games that I found, 3 more to be exact. I enjoyed doing the last video, and while those were sort of obvious, most anticipated games, I've since gone on to start chipping away and working my way through the list of things that interest me, and dare I say, I found some things that I'm more pumped for this time around. So look, I won't leave you hanging. Without further ado, here are the 3 new games that I suggest you check out that I found on the Steam Next Fest. First up is Star Tracker, and we are front loading it. This game has left such an impression on me, and I enjoyed the demo so much, I had to force myself to put it down, and this would be easily like top 5 most anticipated games coming up. It's that cool. And I'm someone who gets very, very skeptical about simulator type games coming out of devs that I'm not super familiar with. A lot of shovelware in this space, a lot of throwing proof of concept alpha builds into early access and hoping some streamer makes your game go viral. This is not that. This is so polished and well realized. All of the world building, like you're obviously a big rig trucker and you're driving deliveries around, but they've got all the interstate signage. It is very much tapping hard into that space cowboy sub-genre that you get, except it's more of a space cowboy trucker. So you've got a radio playing all the radio messages and music that you would expect. You've got a CB radio that has guys talking that you can choose to get narratively involved in by grabbing it off the hook and interjecting yourself. That seems really promising, actually. Sort of narrative adjacent. It's there if you really want to get into it. They've got a really interesting loop worked out. The mechanics of the ship or truck or whatever you want to call it, and the way it drifts around, it kind of just handles like a truck in space. Whether that needs to make sense or not doesn't matter, because the world building aesthetic is so solid. All the truck designs, the traffic going around, it feels like one of those lived-in space experiences so many people crave. All the sort of interstate lanes, it's very Americana with all the signage, truck stop sort of areas where you've got less rule of the road and more pulling up at a bay to dock. You're not just stuck in your cockpit either, like you move around. You start the whole game out by going on an EVA in your spacesuit and repairing the hull. You've got battery and fuse box mechanics to all the different parts of the systems and the ship, so it's actually quite robust, but way more accessible. You know, something like Elite Dangerous and ship managing in that is fairly scary. And I don't want to say this is even more involved, but it's definitely more accessible, and it's less about being locked in the cockpit and more moving around and interacting with the systems, albeit not super complex. Really clean, really well realized, really accessible. I got to a point where I couldn't figure out where the gravity battery slot was, so I lost gravity in my ship and all my boxes were floating around. Then I did this like super hyperdrive jump that channels Star Wars. Like you have the overhead lever that you pull after you pull up to the docking zone, and jumping got all my cargo inside my ship basically destroyed, and I smashed all my spare fuses, and then my environmentals started going out and I had to change out the control chip for that. But because I didn't switch the system off, I managed to short the entire system, and long story short, I ended up dying because I got too cold in my ship. You reverse up and you've got a really cool reverse cam that works really well. It's quite intuitive and yet tricky, like there's a skill cap to it. Picking up trailers, I've saw other trucks with like road trains, multiple trailers in a row, and so it's really tapping so many cool different parts of like almost like a survival trucker game, and I love it. I really, really love it, and I suggest you check it out because I am so pumped to hear more about this game and check it out when it comes out this year apparently. Next up is a surprising late entry. I just checked this out on a whim right before I did this video, but it jumped right to the top of the list. It's Abiotic Factor, the game that I never knew that I needed. And according to this, it's coming out 3rd of May. Ooh, just a month away. I am so pumped. Let me tell you what this is. This is Half-Life 1 if it was multiplayer. I think you can play up to 6-player co-op, and sort of like colony survival, but crafting because you're a scientist. Think the Cascade event from Half-Life 1, but you're just some generic scientists trying to make a go of it and survive during the lockdown. So it gets into more survival crafting, you know, building up, dealing with issues, but also food, that sort of thing. But all through the lens and aesthetic of a scientist trying to build up your base. I didn't get to play it a whole lot because I was having some pretty bad hitching, some performance issues. However, I went and had a look in all the discussion threads. I didn't see anyone complaining about it, so I'm willing to concede maybe I was having a system issue. I'm not sure. But they've really nailed the art and the aesthetic. And on top of that, like in the intro, you have your sort of arriving at the facility, very Black Mesa intro. It seems to be in the Aussie outback, so all the security forces are Australians, and the dude that takes you through the bloody tutorial, the introduction, Bruce, I think his name was, an American scientist. Just these little things. All the security staff for the facility are Australian, but all the actual internal staff are American, probably because it's an American facility. And that dude was actually hilarious. I couldn't believe how good the writing was, and the voice actor delivered it so well. And it very much strikes me as it's probably just some dude off the dev team. It's got a very grunge, very indie feel, not overproduced, but was actually fun. It seems a weird thing to sort of labor on, but it, you know, especially given previous current events and my position on just the industry in general, it was really cool to hear indie raw writing and voice acting that was side-slapping. It was actually really good. Yeah, at first I thought, oh, it's just another survival game, but the whole aesthetic and the through line from it and dealing with the more anomaly, cascade-based science sort of stuff. Even at the beginning, you're throwing nets on things and stomping them. It seems to have like a stone shard come Tarkov health system as well, bandaging bleeds and splinting and all that as well. Anyway, my point is, it has the aesthetic of a game from 20 years ago, but it has the sensibilities and mechanics of something quite modern and switched on and really knows what its audience is. I just hope that it finds its audience because it's just so unusual, and even when I gave it a go, I didn't expect it to be this going in. So I have to shout it out. This definitely will be covering this at release. There's no question about it. This seems so cool. Last game to cover is Indica. So this is strange, and I wouldn't say red flags, but I have some apprehension. I'm not sure what to make of it. It's an 11-bit published game, which they've started doing recently a bit more and more, spreading it out. I'm quite vocal about my love of 11-bit. They kind of don't miss. And this seems yet again outside of their wheelhouse. For those not across it, they cover so many different things, and especially when they internally develop, they just do different genres. Frostpunk 2 is like their only sort of sequel that they've ever done, so it'd be really interesting to see how they handle that. But it's some weird alternate Russia bloody like 19th century thing, and you're playing as a nun. You're escorting this dude that may be the devil. I mean, that's what it says in the marketing material, so I don't think I'm giving the game away. And already in the little bit that I played, she's got like a sort of inner monologue narrator that she debates with. It's kind of clever because it's not really her voice necessarily. It's dialogue, not monologue. You know, she was starting to deal with some heavy topics, you know, words that start with R that I can't talk about, you know, but also murder and theft and the idea of sin, and is one sin equal to another? So it seems to be very religious based, and it doesn't seem to be pulling its punches. The only thing that I'm worried about is, and I don't necessarily want to paint 11-bit with the brush, but the 2024 brush is these sort of things, you'd expect them to be sort of deconstruction, more of a criticism of religion. I feel like, in going off their track record, you know, they're pretty based, to be honest. They've done things like Children of Mortar, you know, big old bloody family-based story. Nuclear Family, the game, basically. I feel like it actually might just be a really interesting, nuanced narrative revolving around, you know, real fundamentalist religion. It did have some really cool trippy moments where you sort of split between dimensions. You had to pray, hold right click to pray, to switch back and forth to platform around. So this seems to be light gameplay, but it's still interesting. Anyway, the point is, it seems cool. It seems considered. They've put a lot of effort into it, even though it very much is that indie kind of jank. And and can't not mention the soundtrack. It's got like this chip tune, ultra clubby. It doesn't make any sense. But the longer I played it, the better it was. Like, oh my god, who would have thought that? You look at the video on the screen. Who would have thought you'd put a bloody chip tune pumping bloody dance anthem against it? But, you know, I'm getting chased by baddies and I'm running along to absolute bangers and everything works. Anyway, so there's 3 more games that I found on Next Fest, and I'll probably keep going as well. There seems to be quite a few more that are good. I've covered a couple of other things. I won't even mention them because we'll probably put them in another video, but these were the ones that were the sexiest to me at the time of recording. Let me know what you found, what you think, what you might be interested in. Help me out. Help me curate some things. And of course, make sure you check these out yourselves. Make up your own mind and see if you want to play them. I think they're all coming out relatively soon, which is really exciting. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.